right, so might as well get started. It's 2:05. So we're in week 3 now, and this week we are solving equations and inequalities. So there is a lot of stuff for this week. So it is going to be a little overwhelming this week, but it's okay because you don't have to be perfect at everything you look at this week. You just want to have an idea of how to solve different types of things. Some of these things will appear and you'll see it again later. So don't expect yourself to be like an expert on all of these, but have a general idea and, just be able to recognize, oh, this is this type of equation, this is what I do. That's the big thing, is to be able to identify the different types of equations, because that's what we're doing this week. So you've got 5 sections. We're finishing up chapter 1, which is equations, inequalities, and mathematical modeling. So the first section is 1.4, which is quadratic equations and applications. Now that is a section where you're going to be working with quadratic equations pretty much every single week going forward. So that section is very important. I'm actually going to highlight that because that is so important. And because it's so important, I actually have 2 videos in the live session link, 2 live sessions I've done in the past on that section. Basically, I split that up into 2 different videos. They're both like an hour long because there's a lot of material there. So definitely focus on 1.4 because that is going to come up again, and you're going to be using that a lot. So being able to solve quadratic equations are very, very important. 1.5 is complex numbers. I'm doing a live session on that on Friday at 2 p.m. A lot of people, this is their first time seeing complex numbers, which is basically you have something called an imaginary number. And this is completely brand new for a lot of people. But going into electrical engineering, complex numbers actually come up a lot. And so that's important for anybody that's going into electrical engineering. You want to really make sure you understand that section. The next section is 1.6, which is just called other types of equations. So that section covers solving rational equations, which are equations with fractions, solving radical equations, which are equations with the square root symbol or cube root symbol, absolute value equations, just various different types. And so that's where it's important to be able to recognize, this is a rational equation, this is what we do. This is a radical equation, this is what we do. So you want to be able to recognize the form and then the steps. And then that way you can go from there. That's what you should focus on rather than being overwhelmed by, oh my goodness, there's so much. Recognize the form and the steps for each different type of equation because the steps are slightly different. But if you have the steps down, and even if you write it down, that can help you with that section. And some of that shows up throughout the rest of the term. You're not going to be using those like every single week like the quadratic equations though. So you do use radicals in, I think that's going to be next week. You'll solve radical equations briefly in next week. The rational equations will pop up in week 6. So they kind of pop up here and there. 1.7 is linear inequalities in one variable. That actually is used a lot when you go into business. So if you're in a business application or going into a business degree, I would pay attention to that. That's a lot of the types of things where you have an equation, you want to know when something is greater than or less than, and that sort of thing. And then 1.8 is other types of inequalities. That goes over polynomial inequalities and rational inequalities. That's important if you have to go on to calculus. So if you are not someone who has calculus down the road, then I would not focus so much. You need to be able to do it so that you can do it on the quiz and on the homework, but I don't want you to spend your time on that section if the only reason you need it is for the quiz and the homework and you're not going to need it down the road. So if I take my pen, I should have annotated these with the pen. So that's if you want to go to calculus. This is for business. You need these for like week 4, week 6. Complex numbers for electrical engineering. I'm trying to write on my screen while it's up and not flat, which is why my handwriting is really funny. And then 1.4 is everyone. So there's a little bit for everybody there. not everybody is going to need everything in this week, but you get introduced to it all and then focus on what would be most useful for you going forward. If you've taken MA104, we covered the quadratic equations, but that's all we covered. The rest of this is completely new material for anybody that's coming from that class. So actually, a lot of this I already mentioned what you use this material for. So business applications, that's the inequalities. Construction, we will be dealing things with area. Sports and projectiles, those actually use quadratic equations. Ballistics also uses quadratic equations. Speed involving water currents, those are rational equations. Machinery and automation, so if you actually are going to be managing like a factory or something and you're going to be using with a lot of machines, there's the types of, they're called work problems, and it's like, okay, this machine does this job in 2 hours. I have this older machine, so it's slower, so it does the same amount in 5 hours. If both of these machines are working at the same time, how much can I get done? You know, like how many items that I'm making can I get through? So those are rational equations, and so actually that is useful if that's where you're going to be going with your career. If you're going to end up in that area, you might want to focus on the rational equations, which is 1.6. And then, as I mentioned, complex numbers, those pop up a lot with current, which is electrical engineering. So a lot of this I've already mentioned. So it does touch on a lot of different things. So here's the breakdown of which sections each part relies on. The most important things that you're going to be the most important skills you're going to need for this week is solving linear equations, factoring as usual, and then working with rational expressions, which was P.5. So those are the big things that you're going to need to know. So if you're still struggling with those, you might want to do a little bit of practice with those. And that should be enough to get you through this week. So that leads us, that's all the topics. So this leads us to what you need to actually do. So you've got your discussion, the ungraded practice assignment, the turned-in assignment, the graded assignment, and then the quiz. So let's talk about the discussion. And the discussion is actually going to be easier this week because it's not the same type of discussion we had last week where you had to do a specific math problem. You are going to do some math, but it's going to be different. So here's basically the motivation. So when you learn online, it's really hard to, you feel isolated, it's just you're at your computer. And so that's why we have discussion, so that you can interact with your classmates, you can learn from each other, you can help each other out. That's how we kind of get the whole classroom feel. And so, that's why we have discussions. And on top of that, there have actually been studies that show that when you teach the material to others or you explain it to others, it helps you learn the material better. And so I actually have a link to an article about that was posted this year about how there's been studies and, the kind of benefits that it brings by teaching it to others. So, if you feel you can read that article, it's a really interesting article, very easy to follow. And so we want you to help your classmates out, be helped by your classmates, and also if you try to teach the material, that helps you learn. So the way this discussion is, the goal is to share things that you were struggling with. Like you say, oh, I'm really struggling with using the quadratic formula. And then you can also say, oh, you know what? I am really good at solving these linear inequalities. And so you're basically, the things that you're good at, you could try to teach it to each other, like walk through an example and teach that example to classmates. And then you can say, okay, this is something I struggle with, and your classmates can reply and say, oh, you struggle with quadratic equations. Here's an example, and then you can teach somebody in your reply. So that way you can teach the things that you're good at, that you understand, and then have other students help you with the things that you struggle with. Because sometimes, hearing it from someone else, it might make more sense. You can watch my videos teach the material, but sometimes maybe the way I'd explain it doesn't make sense, but maybe a classmate can explain it better. So that's sort of what this discussion is all about, is teaching others and learning from each other's. And it's all based off of what are you hung up on and what are you good at, and sharing our strengths and improving our weaknesses, basically. So with that in mind, we actually have a specific structure here. So it's the prompt itself is not written out this way, split up in these 3 sections. I've sort of split it up this way to kind of make it a little bit easier to follow. There's basically 3 things that you want to do in your discussion. So the first part is to talk about something that you struggle with, you know, something that, and try to do it for week 3, because we're covering a lot of things in week 3. So something in week 3 that you're really struggling with. And if, you know, if it's a problem, one of the practice problems doing, maybe take a picture of your work, post it in the discussion and say, hey, where is my mistake? Or I'm having trouble at this step, where do I go next? That sort of thing. And then that way you can get help. The second part of the discussion is then to help others. So you can talk about something that you enjoyed or that you were good at, you know, and reflect on that, and then demonstrate that, you know, walk through an example of that, show your work, explain how that works. If you really want to get creative, you can make a video. You don't have to do it on paper. You could do something like I do. There are, if you don't have access to a tablet, that might be hard, or maybe you just want to show your picture up on, you know, on a webcam or something. But you're welcome to try to do it with a, or even you can do a PowerPoint and you can like turn the PowerPoint into a video or something like that. If you're interested in learning wanting to do that in video, just let me know and I can help you out. But I don't want to have to tie you down to just doing it by paper, because if you'd rather explain things in video, that's fine. I'm cool with that. And then the third part of the discussion is to try to connect this to the real world. And so I've given you some examples already in this, you know, this video, so that should help you out. But just to try to give an example of the type of equation and where it can be used, you know, try to find something interesting, you know, maybe what the exact equation is. Between these 3 things, you should have a nice substantive discussion. If it's getting long, you don't have to address all 3 things, but this is enough that if you try to address at least one of them, you should have something that's with substance that then can help the discussion, whether you only do part 1 or you only do part 2 or whatever. But you want to make sure that we do have a minimum word count, and so you want to make sure that it's long enough that somebody can reply. So I've sort of laid out how you could do this. So like the main post, you have 3 choices, or you can do all 3. Talk, you know, the thing that you struggle with, the thing you understand, the connections to the real world. So you want to make sure you go back to this slide with the specifics, because, you know, examples, mathematical examples really help. And then when you're replying to people, you can try to help somebody out with something they're struggling with, try to explain it. I saw a lot of people doing that in the discussion for week 2, where they saw, oh, this person made an error, and they tried to help them out. And I thought, this is awesome, because that's how you learn the material better. You can also, if somebody said already did that, you could provide extra resources. Maybe you found a great website and you think that will help them out. So you can share that. You can also share any study strategies that you're finding that are helping out, or helpful tips. Like if somebody's struggling with understanding which formula to use, you can say, okay, well, this is how I remember which one to use. So it's about sharing where you guys are at and helping each other out. The one thing, and I am going to highlight this, it's in Beware. I should have made this even bigger. Do not don't put questions that are on the quizzes or the assignments, and don't give answers to those. So if you're going to give examples, pick them from the textbook as like the odd problems or the even problems. Don't pick homework problems, and don't pick quiz questions, because I don't want other people to see the answers and then cheat on you. So if I see that, I will hide your discussion post and email you, and then you'll have to make a new post. So just keep that in mind, because you know you don't want people to be cheating off you, because then you get in trouble and it's just going to be a big mess. So try to pick things that are out of the textbook that are not required work, basically. So do you have any questions on the discussion and what you have to do for the discussion this week? Okay, I'm going to take that silence as a no. If you do have questions, of course, if you're watching the recording, you can email me. It's always better to ask a question if you don't understand something, rather than not do it at all, because I can help. You know, I want to help you guys. I want to give you guys points. So if you don't understand something, contact me. All right, so, oh, I see you're typing. I will sit here for a moment. Oh. Oh, you knocked your mouse the battery out. That is some knockage. All right, so assignments. So your ungraded practice assignment. Now, these are great problems to choose for the discussion, because these, I mean, these are great to ask for help on or to work out, you know, show the work and explain them, because these are not 4 points, you know. So definitely choosing any of these would be great for the discussion. But these are also, you know, if you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get practice or how do I learn math, is, well, you do problems. That's really, you have to practice, because that's the only way it gets ingrained in your brain. It's like when we had to learn multiplication tables and you had to do them over and over and over again until it became second nature. It's the same sort of idea. Graded week 3 assignment. So I've actually gotten fewer emails this second week than the first week about how the assignments go. So that's good. You guys are getting used to it. I do want to remind you that you can resubmit your work. There is a small penalty, but, you know, that's good, better than not having a better grade, I guess. And if you do have questions on the assignment, I didn't really get many questions this week about it, but you are welcome to email me and ask me questions about the assignment. I am happy to help. That's what I'm here for. And as a reminder, I've had a few people that are still trying to type it up in Word. You don't have to type it up in Microsoft Word. If you want to take a photo or a scan, you can do so. Just you want to make sure that you have a single file, so whether you open a Word document and put your pictures in it, or if you use this website to create a PDF, or you use an app on your phone, you can do that. You don't have to mess around with typing it up if that doesn't work for you, because I do not want the technology to be a hindrance to your learning. So I just want to reiterate that you do not have to type it if that is too difficult for you. So the quiz. So I haven't gotten too many questions yet about the quiz in the Dropbox. I'm going to go over it again. I'm anticipating that as people, you know, see their grades or whatever, and they may end up having more questions. So I'm going to just reiterate how it works. You get 10 multiple choice questions. You have 1 hour. And as soon as you hit start the quiz, that timer starts. So if something happens during that time, like say you get interrupted or you lose internet or whatever, send me an email as soon as you can, whether your internet comes back on or whatever. Send me an email, let me know, and then I can reset it if I have to. If I do reset the quiz, the questions completely change, so you would have to start completely over from scratch. But I can do that if something happens. But try to avoid being in a situation where that happens. So try to make sure you have 1 hour uninterrupted where you can take the quiz. Make sure as you're taking the quiz, you show your work on paper. Don't bother trying to type it up at the same time. That would be too long. That would waste too much time. So try to do it on paper just as you go through. It's okay to be disorganized. You can organize it later. Let's see. Submit work to a separate Dropbox. So there is the quiz Dropbox, which is separate. That is required because that's how you get partial credit. And even if you get 100%, submit your work. So it's not based off of what grade. Everybody needs to submit their work to the Dropbox because that's where you get more points. And so you'll upload that, and you don't have to type it up. You can upload your photos to the Dropbox, and then those would be graded, and then that grade is taken into account with your quiz. So the grader will open up your quiz, the grader will open up your work, and then if you have a problem where you got wrong but you have work that's correct, they'll give you some points. If you have a problem where maybe your answer is wrong, But you have the correct work, and so something weird happened, if you got 0 points, something happened, you could still get some points. If it seems like, oh, you just guessed, depending on, they may take away points, but most people don't have points ever take away. It's usually you always get points added, you get partial credit, which is great on a multiple choice exam because it's so easy to make a small error, or maybe you accidentally picked the wrong button or something like that. So once they go through that, all of the points will be added to your quiz. So whatever the number is for your quiz, that is your final score for the quiz. That will include all these extra points. But just as also to let you know that they've looked at it, the score Dropbox will tell you how many extra points you earned back so that you can see, oh, okay, like if you get a 10 in the Dropbox, then I got 10 additional points added to my quiz. So my quiz was 60 when I took it. Then my Dropbox says 10, and now my quiz says 70 because those 10 points were added in. So that's how that works. So you're going to see points in the Dropbox to tell you how much was added, and your score will increase. So both numbers will change, basically. So that's how that quiz Dropbox works. So I will be sending out reminders. I already did today about turning in that work, because if you don't turn in work, then you're going to actually lose points because it's required. So if you're not doing it, then there's a penalty. You're losing half your points. So get that work in. That's really important. So for this week's quiz, so this week is week 3 quiz, covers week 2 material. We're always quizzed on the previous week, so you have time to practice and get feedback. Oh, that's the highlighter. I just meant to do the pen. So week 2 material. So the quiz is going to cover graphing and analyzing graphs, like finding their intercepts, figuring out the domain, talking about the shape of the graph, talking about the symmetry. For these, go ahead and Desmos.com to help you. So use Desmos to help you answer those questions. Don't try to graph them by hand. That will take too much time. There will be questions on solving linear equations. You'll be analyzing equations, which means finding intercepts, domain, and symmetry. Those are all, when it says analyzing equations, that's the graphs are not given to you. So you could do those by solving, or you could graph those and then do it graphically. But in graphs means the graphs are given to you. The equation means the graphs are not given to you, but you can graph them if that's the way you want to do it. There's going to be some translating from English to math, questions on slope, getting the equation of a line, writing linear models. Those are the kinds of things we did in the week 2 discussion. In the week 2 discussion, I actually have posted a solution to the discussion prompt, basically my own way of going through it. So I do recommend reviewing that and seeing how I went about the problem, so that you can see, oh, that's what I should have done, or that might give you some additional understanding of the material. Okay, now these are a lot of links, so I would definitely recommend downloading the PowerPoint so you can click on these links. So to study, I have lots of links on word problems and lots of links on translating mathematics. Those are the places where people struggle. Anything that involves words, people are like, oh my goodness, how do I do this with math? I did recently find out that IXL, this website that I love, you only have a certain number of problems you can do a day. So don't try to do all of these in one day, because you're going to run out of free problems. So try to do a little bit every day. And I don't know how many problems you're allowed to do free before they don't let you, but I've only had one person tell me that there's a limit. So I don't know how much it is, because I've never heard that before. So I don't know if it's like 50 problems. I don't know how many problems it is. But you can do some practice, and then when you hit that limit, you should be able to go in the next day and do some more, because I think it's a daily limit of how many problems you can do for your practicing. And that's actually the way to study anyways. Don't cram. You want to do a little bit every day. So that's actually to your benefit to do it that way. So definitely download the PowerPoint to look on those links, because you're not going to want to try to do these from the video. Okay, and now lastly, how are we putting this all together? My suggested schedule for working through all of this. So I'm going to zoom here. Okay, so let's look at Wednesday here so you can read through the discussion prompt. I suggest you start on 1.4. Because I have 2 videos on 1.4 in the live sessions, if you prefer, you could just watch those videos and read the textbook for that section, because that might be better for you. I know not everybody can read the textbook, but since I have videos going through that section, you can get what you need from my videos. So if you watch my live sessions, I'm going to add this in, and of course it doesn't let me add in when it's, oops, 10 there, 1.4 live sessions. So there's 2 of them. So I would definitely watch that instead of reading the textbook, because that might make more sense to you, and then work some of the practice problems. On the assignment, problems 1A and 2 are related to that section. Then Thursday is 1.5, so that's complex numbers. That's what I'm doing my live session on Friday. Friday is 1.6, other types of equations. So there's lots of different types of equations in there. So there are 3 problems because there's basically 3 different types. Then 1.4 is linear inequalities in one variable. So that's 1.7. I think I said 1.4. 1.7 is linear inequalities in one variable. So there are 2 problems on that. Those are also including absolute value inequalities. And then we have 1.8, which is other types of inequalities. So if I recall correctly, I'm going to reopen up the classroom, because I think I also have live sessions on 1.7 and 1.8. I just want to double check that those are in the classroom before I tell you to watch things, because I remember doing them. I just want to make sure I've stuck them in there. Okay, I'm going to week 3. Yes, I've got a session on 1.7 and one on 1.8. So because I have live sessions in classroom already for both of those are previous recordings, I would say focus on those. Don't try to read a textbook. So I'm going to just say, oops, again, I thought I had, and it was not selected. So I'd say 1.7 live session, and then 1.8 live session. And oof, I cannot spell today. And then if you watch my live on complex numbers, I'm going to go through the whole section there. So that would really leave you only 1.6 that you would have to read. Everything else I'll have videos for. So that could make a big difference on your understanding of the material and kind of help make your time a little more efficient, because if you're watching the video, you can pause it and then work the homework problems that are similar at the same time, rather than trying to read it in the book. So that's basically the schedule. And of course, you can modify as you need to. You can watch all the things if you want, whatever works best for you. So if you have questions, of course, feel free to email me. I'll be sending out things through Remind, helpful links. I'll probably try to send a reminder about those existing videos. If I get a lot of the same question, I'll go through that and Remind. So hopefully this is basically, you've got an idea of everything you're expected to do for the week and how to attack the week, basically, so that it works to your benefit. So, all right. So I'm going to pop off here, stop my sharing just to say goodbye. So again, if you have questions during this video, let me know. I'm going to put this in the weekly content so that when you go to week 3, that's one of the first things you see. So definitely watch that. Watch all of these weekly videos because they're very, very helpful. And I will see you guys at 2 o'clock on Friday for my complex numbers video. All right, so you guys have a great Wednesday, and I will talk to you later. Bye.